What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to a brand new episode of VR365. It is a very special episode. We have 3 people in the building today, which is actually a first for well, I don't know if it's a first. If I've done it before, I did it really crappily, like just adding people and putting windows anywhere around here. But we've actually got some production value in a way. Jim Hall, much thanks to Jim Hall, he created this nice little setup for us where we have these 4 little windows in the corner. We got our trailer, and we've also got this setup right here. So we can do both, and we certainly will. But yeah, this is a brand new episode of VR365, or is it? This could be a VR Roundtable reunion. Of course, Steve Bishop looks a little bit different today. It's Guy Godin. Guy, what is up? Thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming in and taking Steve's spot at the last minute. How's it going?
Good, very good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, yeah. We're definitely glad to have you aboard. Also, those of you guys in chat, let us know if any of our mics are like way too loud or way too low, although the 3 other guys are all on one audio channel, so I can only turn them up all together or turn them down altogether. So we'll have to kind of screw around with that. Chris, of course, is in beautiful San Diego, California. Chris, you've always been a West Coast guy. Now you are on, I'm sorry, you've always been an East Coast guy.
East Coast
guy. Yeah, now you're on the better coast. What is it like? I know it was on fire for about 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's been great. It's very different than the East Coast, but I'm loving it. Yeah, San Diego's really great.
Yeah, have you been able to visit like La Jolla or anything like that? There's some amazing beaches in San Diego. Especially there's one specific beach in La Jolla. It's a public beach that I would always go to. Like, I lived in San Diego for a couple of years, and just gorgeous. But like this little public beach that was in La Jolla, it's surrounded by like multi-million-dollar mansions everywhere, you know. And you walk to this little beach. It's awesome. The waves crash like hard as hell, but it's pretty sweet.
Oh wow, that's great. Yeah, I've been to a lot of beaches so far, but I don't think I've been to that one. I have seen the seals in La Jolla, though. They're very cute.
Alrighty. And, of course, we also have Gary. And Gary, of course, is coming to us from the UK. Gary, how is it going over there in jolly old England?
It's good. It's good here today, yeah. The sun's shining, so that's always good news. And I'm just looking at the live stream, Anthony. It looks great. These new little setup you've got here. Looks good.
Yeah, this is all courtesy of Jim Hall. Jim Hall is kind of like my producer behind the scenes. It's unfortunate, though, I've gotten Jim in trouble because I'll tell people, yeah, Jim Hall does all this stuff. And then other YouTubers have like contacted Jim Hall and said, hey, man, can you kind of help me out and make some type of window like you did for VR365? So I'm creating a lot of extra work for Jim. I don't know if he really appreciates that, but he is a fan. I believe he does like VR365. So he has helped me out, and that is great. All right. So what we're going to get into today, obviously, we're going to be covering the fallout of this week. And one of the ways I wanted to go about this is we can kind of take a bit of a more bigger picture look at this thing and have a more relaxed conversation, and let's think about where is VR going right now. And obviously, we're going to talk a lot about the Oculus Quest 2. We're going to talk about like different game announcements and stuff that have happened and things like that. But what I want to start off with, PCVR, because a lot of us, we got into this around PCVR. You know, a lot of us bought like an HTC Vive, or we got an Oculus CV1. Maybe we added a PlayStation VR. And then, of course, when Quest came along, or maybe the Oculus Go, we might have added one of those. But our primary thing was playing PCVR games. And we thought that this was the future. This is where things are going. It's all about these PCVR games. And I don't know, man, but it kind of seems to me like PCVR is in danger a little bit. And a lot of this is because of Facebook and what they're doing in terms of their direction now. Gary, why don't I go over to you first? So the question I have for you, Gary, is what do you think Facebook's strategy is right now? Do you believe that they are just going to completely abandon PCVR and that's ultimately their strategy? Or is it possible that we're overreacting a little bit in regards to the PCVR side of this? Because even though they're retiring the Rift S and they're saying that the Quest is basically going to be their PCVR headset as well, they haven't said that they're never going to have any more PCVR games or anything like that, as far as I know. Gary, what do you think Facebook is doing here?
I think if you were to make a bet about it, you would say that they are absolutely moving away from the PC platform. They are concentrating on standalone, all-in-one VR headsets, and it makes sense for them as a company to do that. I would say personally, I think as a company, not taking into account the fact that as enthusiasts still want them to focus on PC as well, it makes sense for them to do that. And you only need to look at things like Medal of Honor, where they are now saying that Medal of Honor will be, which was, at least initially had some contribution or entirely the financial contribution in order to make that game from Oculus/Facebook. Now, it turns out that they are going to release that game on Steam. And to me, that looks like a reaction of them saying, look, we're moving away from PCVR. We spoke to you about this. We wanted you to make this game 2-3 years ago. Now we're moving in a slightly different direction. We can't offer any extra investment in order to fulfill the investment you require to make this game a purely Oculus platform exclusive. So go ahead, release it on Steam, and then you can make money from them as well. And it removes burden from Facebook in order to try to carry through with these promises that they made to Respawn. And I think that just points in the direction they're moving. I don't think they're going to invest, at least certainly not as heavily, and probably not at all in big PC-only VR titles. I think they are going to move almost entirely to standalone, which is a shame, but from my point of view, and I guess from Facebook's point of view as a company, it sort of makes sense for them. It's disappointing, but it does make sense.
Yeah. Guy, why don't I ask you this? By the way, I said Guy Godin like a million times. Apologies for that in previous shows and stuff.
Problem.
It is Guy Godin. And Guy, the question I have is, so yeah, I mean, it does appear like Facebook wants to get away from PC. And the reason why a lot of people believe that kind of makes logical sense for them is because they have no control over Windows. So they're on someone else's operating system. They're on hardware that they don't have control over. They don't have control over what video card you have, how much memory you have, all these different things. And the idea is when you look at a company like Apple, where they release their phones, they have control over everything. And being on PC, you don't have that control. The investment in high-end PC games, incredibly expensive, millions upon millions of dollars. Whether or not the benefit is really there is questionable. But Guy, my question for you is, we've seen stores that are on PCVR, I mean on PC, like Steam, like good old games, like GOG, all these different stores that are on PC. They're making great money. Why would Facebook? Can't they still have PCVR and still make some pretty like? What if they could be the next Steam? Because if everything goes VR 12 years from now, if it's a VR world 12 years from now, think how many games Oculus has in their library, in their portfolio, and they could be the number one PC gaming store, like if VR ever became like the dominating gaming platform.
Well, I don't think they're in a position to do that because they are restricted to only their devices. So from the beginning, they only included Rifts to be playable on their store because they wanted to guarantee quality and all that. So anything from Vive or from Windows mixed reality and all that, they were never going to be able to be part of the store. And they went like the Apple way, right, where they only allow their hardware to be in the store. So I don't think they're in a position to really capture a good market on PC. Steam is approach is like include all the headsets, and so I think they're in a better position on the PC side. But that being said, I think they're not intentionally staying off PCVR. I think it's just a business decision because the sales on Quest are so much higher that it doesn't make much sense to keep focus on the PCVR side. Like if you show that to a business person, oh, here's how many headsets we sell, here's how many games we sell on Quest, here's how many we sell in the PCVR store, probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense to invest on the PCVR side. I mean, I wish they would have included HDMI pass-through or DisplayPort directly to the Quest 2. That would have avoided all the issues that they have right now with Link. But unfortunately decided to stay with the USB compression approach. So it's just going to make a subpar experience in a way compared to true PCVR.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, sure, they're only using their headsets, and they're not open to Windows Mixed Reality. They're not open to Valve Indexes and Vive, Cosmos, and all these other headsets. But that's their decision. That's their decision as well. Like they decided that. Like they could open it up to everybody. They could make their system more like Viveport. Of course, one of the problems right now is we don't really have like this base level standardization in VR. Like everybody says, VR headsets are monitors. These are just monitors. Why would we have exclusive games for monitors? But the truth is they're not really monitors yet.
It's a little more than that.
Yeah, it's like if you go back to the early days of TV, when people are figuring out TV, like once we had like a standard for TV or a standard for computer monitors where it's kind of like everybody kind of agrees this is the way it's going to be done, then you have all these different manufacturers making them, but they're all kind of making the same thing. But when it comes to VR headsets, there's so much other technology in it besides just the screen, the tracking systems, all of that. And it is difficult. Do you think that's just a nightmare in itself, Guy, where like, and the support is probably even the bigger nightmare, because it's one thing to have to give support to your own customers that bought your hardware and you know what they got and that's your stuff. It's another thing for somebody that has a Vive Cosmos to be like bothering your support people with problems.
Right. Yeah, support is a nightmare on PC in general. You have all sorts of issues that you have no control over. People can have antiviruses. They can have some third-party software that's going to mess with your things. It's just a nightmare. So when you have something like a Go or a Quest where you own the hardware, you know what software is there, no other software can mess with it. It's a lot easier to do support, right? So that's one avenue. I think I understand why they want to stay away from PC. It's always a little harder to do it.
Yeah. Do you think that's also, like, this is kind of a side question, but do you think that's one of the reasons Microsoft is like hasn't really gotten that involved in VR, is the headache supports that come along with it?
I don't know. I think Microsoft just put their foot in the door so that they're kind of in there just in case it blew up, right? So that they could have a way of not missing out. But I think they're not really that committed to VR. They're more into the business AR side, right, with HoloLens and all that.
Yeah. Okay, Chris, going over to you. So one of the biggest fears, of course, if you're like a PC VR gamer and this is your bread and butter, right, is like 3 or 4 years from now, what happens? Because, I mean, you can conceive of a worst case scenario where they basically say at some point, we're going to turn off the Oculus store. The Rift store. We're going to turn off the Oculus Rift store. Like we're going to stop doing updates for CV1 hardware, for Rift S hardware, for like tracking and all of that. And so people have these libraries of games that they've bought that have been exclusive to Oculus's side. And so my question for you is, let's say the year is 2024, and for some weird oddball reason, you want to play Asgard's Wrath, or you want to play Stormland, or you want to play Lone Echo. Do you think you're going to have any problems doing that in the year 2024?
I don't think so. I think what Oculus is doing is they're going to have, eventually they'll have a headset where they can have the Air Link. I mean, it's got to happen on Quest 3 or Quest 4. And at that point, there's almost, no trade-offs if they get it right? The uncompressed fully. I think they're moving towards an uncompressed stream from the PC side. But I still don't think they're going to invest in new PC games. This might just be for, developers who happen to do games that are higher quality than the Quest can handle. I just remember it's so funny looking back at Oculus Connect last year. I remember everyone was so excited about Link, but it was basically like an afterthought, like we never thought Link would be the only way to play PCVR back then. So it's just funny how things change in a year, because, Link was basically a hack. It didn't work too well for months and months. And I feel like that, we were talking about it last year. It was really just a temporary fix to make all those devs who were working on PC games happy because they were missing out on all these sales. But now it's like kind of an essential, I think. And I think Oculus will keep it around for a while, especially since there's these, AAA VR games that they still funded. I feel like if they didn't fund those, it might be a little bit of a different story. But yeah, we'll have to see how this pans out. It's very interesting. It could go entirely one way where it's entirely wireless and it'll be really nice and built in, which it seems like they're doing. They're kind of trying to unify the stores, or they could just eventually cancel it. Not sure.
Yeah, Gary, do you think if they were ever to do that, where they were just to say, it's kind of like these games, like there will be like a certain FIFA game or whatever, and it's like EA says, we're turning off these servers. And like there's some PlayStation games, like, is it Rigs? I know there's a couple of different PlayStation VR games that if you were to find the physical copy somewhere and maybe buy it at a garage sale or a GameStop, you just bought yourself a coaster, because you take it home, you put
Starblood.
Yeah, it's been shut down.
Starblood, I think. Starblood Arena, I think, had that, didn't it? Was it that one? Yeah.
Yeah, Starblood. And so sometimes things are just shut down. They just turn it all off. So like, think of the servers that they are running for maybe some of that PCVR stuff. Do you think that they would shut it down, but then they say, what we're going to do is we're going to update the code so that it works. You can play your games, but multiplayer, like, none of that will work, but your games will work. But there's no future updates after this point. There's no tracking updates. There's no controller updates. Like, do you think they could do it that way, where the Rift software for PC will still run, but it's basically like frozen in time, so to speak?
Well, I think what I was saying earlier about them moving in this standalone direction, I think that is true, but there is also this value add to them doing this link cable thing with the compression, or like a wireless link using something akin to virtual desktop, of course. But the point is, I think they'll judge that kind of decision based on how they see it going forward and how they see how many people are using this link option, because I think that their focus will be on standalone, but they'll still provide functionality to use these headsets as PC VR headsets as well. I don't think they're going to immediately stop that. I'm not trying to say that, but I do think that they'll look at how many people are using their headsets for certain functionality, and then just make a judgment based on that. The thing is, I don't think within sort of 3 years they're going to completely abandon the Oculus Store on PC or anything like that. I think they'll maintain that, and the costs of running servers and stuff like this, Facebook can take that hit, just not to get such a bad perception from the enthusiasts that still want to play some of these games. Then again, there will come a point where perhaps they see the number of people that are playing these games is not enough to warrant it. So yeah, I think that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah, I know they have enough money to like keep servers running and do all that type of stuff. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is they don't have the motivation to do that. Like, and the numbers are so small. It's just so insignificant that for them, they would rather just shut that whole thing down and just not even have that as like an issue.
If the numbers get that small, then I think they probably will just shut it down at that point. But I think also they've got to look at this from the counterbalance it from the fact that they released a Rift S last year, and people have that product and they don't want to look at this perception at the moment where they can say we're completely abandoning that pipeline for you to play your games within a year. I think they've still got to allow at least a couple of years, and there could be an announcement within a couple of years saying, look, you've got 2 more years and then we are shutting this down. And that's probably how they'll approach it. If they do that. And there's some comments in chat as well that I'm seeing like about scaremongering and stuff like this. And it's true, because none of us really know exactly what Facebook have planned with this stuff. We're only going on what we're seeing and what, I think sort of makes sense. And I hope I'm wrong. About that.
Yeah, so like, okay, I haven't seen the comments in terms of like scaremongering. So they're basically saying like, I'm trying to like freak people out with this shutting PCVR down, and PCVR is dead, everybody. Let's all walk away. It's all over with. But the thing is, even if they don't like actually shut down the store and all of that, if they stop funding big PCVR games, I mean, it's effectively the same thing. Even if the store is still operational, if Oculus never funds another big PCVR game, that, I mean, it's the same thing, really. Guy, let me go over to you. So let's pretend that this nightmare scenario is true from a PCVR standpoint. I mean, there's still going to be great games in VR, and quests are going to get better and better. But let's say, I mean, for the graphic whores out there that want PCVR, like they're just not impressed by standalone, and they just never will be. Is there going to be enough big PCVR games from other companies? Like we're looking at Half-Life Alyx on this trailer. And Valve originally said they were going to have 3 VR games. They've basically backed away from that. And so we just got Half-Life Alyx. I don't know if we're ever going to get anything else from them. And the problem is we never got a Pepsi to Oculus's Coke. We never got that other company that was going to keep Oculus in check, especially in the PC VR world. I mean, Valve is the only one, right? But Valve doesn't make games on a regular basis. Valve doesn't give a third-party developer a couple $100,000 to do this or that for a timed exclusivity window. Where is the PC VR games going to come from?
That's a good question. From what I hear, the sales on PC VR are about maybe a tenth of what you get on Quest. So anybody who makes a game today can target PCVR, but they can expect a tenth of the revenue they'll get if they make one on mobile. So it's tough. So I mean, I don't know where it's going to come from, because no studio can make a game on PC and make enough money to pay for the actual game today. Like, it's just not possible. Like, all the big titles are all been funded by either Oculus or someone else taking a risk and all that. So it's going to be really hard. I don't know what's going to happen there.
Yeah. I'm looking for an example of like a smaller developer. So for example, we got this recent game that I believe is in early access, Stride. It's kind of like a Mirror's Edge in VR. And the developer of this game, Joyway, they're not like a huge AAA ginormous studio. So we could still end up getting like a lot of these smaller games. The problem is they're just not going to have like the polish that you really want from these like ginormous big AAA games that have a lot more funding behind them. And for me as a VR gamer, there's enough of these small games, and I find the really good ones, and it's enough for me. The problem is you're not going to attract like people from the outside to jump in, because they see, the thing is, if you go back to flat gaming, like if I was a flat gamer, you got ginormous announcements of all these huge flat games all the time on a regular basis. So flat gamers are like so spoiled in terms of like they get everything they could possibly ever want, you know, and so many companies are competing against each other in the flat world. And it's just one big, ginormous Red Dead Redemption after another. Chris, going over to you, what do you think about that? Like, do you think if our PCVR future is basically smaller third parties and we're just not going to get these ginormous games, do you think PCVR is just going to be like this niche for the longest time?
Yeah, I mean, PCVR is probably always going to be a niche. I can never see, you know, all my friends getting these high-end PCs to play VR. I can see them getting Quests very easily. It's just like that balance. But like, I guess to that point of like distribution and whatever Facebook is doing, it does seem like they're trying to make the Quest a better platform for these indie devs to kind of even move them away from PCVR, announcing that off-store distribution system at Facebook Connect. That kind of is a fundamental shift in the Quest to make it more open, which I think they have to do to kind of officially kill the PCVR side, because right now that's the only thing that PCVR has over the Quest in terms of game distribution. Like, it's not super hard anymore to make a Quest game and optimize it. A lot of devs know how to do it. There's a lot of tips on how to do it now. The problem has always been like, how do I get my game on this Oculus store that's very hard to get in? But if Oculus is opening that up, I mean, we're going to have the same indie games that are on PC. They're definitely going to release it on Quest, even if it's off, you know, unlisted. Like I think every dev is going to need to do that for money reasons. So yeah, it sounds like every game on PC, at least on the Oculus side, unless it's funded by Valve or something, will probably be like a Quest port. But what happens one day when the Quest is powerful enough that it can play Asgard's Wrath, that, you know, it plays Stormland? I think eventually, I think 5 to 6 years, we'll have something good enough to play some of these in maybe even a slightly lower way, but on headset. And then PC seems less and less good, I guess. So yeah, it's a weird world we live in.
Yeah, actually, you bring up an interesting point there, because in the news, all of us are aware of something called SideQuest, which of course allows us to put stuff on the Oculus Quest that isn't official. And it's been this interesting thing that developed, and Facebook so far has been hands off on it, and they haven't shut it down or done anything deliberately to hamper it in a major way. But what they are doing is they're going to have this new policy where basically what can happen is, instead of SideQuest can still exist in this form, and it'll be easier with SideQuest, but developers don't necessarily need to go to somebody like SideQuest now, because what they can do is they essentially can put their game on the Oculus store for Quest, but it will be hidden. It'll just be like regular people that just go into the store on their Quest, they will not see it. However, if you go to that developer's website, they could have a link to that game. You could buy the game. They could give you a key. Then you go onto your Oculus Quest and you redeem the key, or you redeem it in your account. And then now when you go to your library, bam, whatever such and such game shows up, looks like it's official, you know, it's in your library and all that stuff, but it's just going to be hidden, basically. Gary, what do you think this is how do you think this is going to affect the curation? Is this the answer to their heavy-handed curation policies of like not allowing, for example, Pixel Ripped 1989 is not on the freaking Oculus Quest store, which boggles the mind. But now it could be on as, I mean, not now, but when they start this program, you could go to Arvory's website and maybe be able to buy Pixel Rip 1989, get it on your Quest, and it shows up just fine, and it's like a hidden store page.
Yeah, so, I mean, this to me, unless I'm missing something, this is only good news from what I'm reading about this, because so it will appear in unknown sources the same way as it does if you load something through SideQuest. You don't need SideQuest to sideload anything at the moment, but you can access certain things through that, and it makes it easier. It makes once you've got that set up through SideQuest, you can install things in a much easier way. And like Guy, Virtual Desktop has his version of Virtual Desktop, which includes the streaming option in SideQuest. The option without that is in the official Oculus store. But the thing is, like I say, unless I'm missing something, this is fantastic news because it allows people like SideQuest to still operate in their usual way. And it's a one-stop shop for all of these URLs. It's basically a URL that you click on, and then it will allow you to install it into unknown sources on your Quest, which is, as easy as it comes. So even the people that run SideQuest have said that this cuts out sort of 3 steps of the transition of them sort of getting stuff onto your Quest. So it's fantastic news. I really like this, and it's going to open a lot more by having this official way of getting stuff on, while also not discluding people like SideQuest, is fantastic, and it's going to help consumers. It's going to help us all. If I'm wrong somewhere with that, then let me know. But to me, this is one of the best things, one of the best announcements of the past couple of days, honestly.
Yeah, it does seem like a pretty good announcement. I've always wondered, though, because I remember back to the days of, was it the Xbox 360? I forget which Xbox it was, but they had like an experimental online store. Like they had their regular Xbox Live, and then they had like an experimental store where basically anybody and everybody, like you could make a game for like 50 cents and it could be complete and utter garbage, but like there was all kinds of weird, crazy shit. Does anybody remember that, what I'm talking about? Like this experimental store that, I forget what they called it, but it was on Xbox 360. And
I don't. I never got too deep into that, to be honest. But no, I don't remember that.
They shut it down after a while, but I always wondered, why doesn't Oculus just do that? Like you're on the official store, they have all the official games, and then there's a little thing that says like experimental store or something like that, and then when you click on that, it gives you a warning and says, these games haven't been fully vetted and tested and and so it's kind of like use at your own risk type of thing. And that's the way it was on Xbox at the time. Guy, do you believe that they don't want to do that just because they feel like they just don't want to confuse people and it's like poisoning the well, and so it's better to just have these like hidden store pages instead?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a good thing for developers to try to let users try their game and all that. But without having it be visible on the store, it means that people have no way of knowing about your game. So that's a problem. So let's say that I release a game, then I have to do my own marketing. I have to do my own promotion of it, but people will never see it on the store. So it's going to be very hard to sell something. So I think having a secondary store, like you mentioned, where people can see the trailers, the videos, some screenshots in VR, that would be helpful a lot for developers. But the way they're doing it right now is just essentially distributing keys to app that you put on the store. So they kind of had that going on Go and Gear VR, right? Where if you weren't approved to be on the store, you could distribute keys and have them sent to users, right? Yeah. But that had the problem that nobody knew about those games anyway. Mm-hmm. So it had a big visibility problem. So I think it's going to be the same issue here.
Yeah, I wonder if this will, for games like Pixel Ripped, where they're just not on Quest for some reason, I wonder if they'll realize, hey, this is a side-loaded game, or, like this game is unofficial and it has 100 downloads or whatever the number is. This, like, maybe they're trying to not have so much moderation. It's more just like, oh, look, everyone loves this game. I guess we have to have it. Right. That could be what they're doing for now. Yeah. But not. Oh, go ahead. Chris. Okay, I was just going to say, it'll probably eventually turn into an experimental store, too. I mean, there's no reason not to, I don't think.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because it's your own frustrations, Chris, if I'm right, about getting stuff onto Quest, or the submission process, or how you approach them and this kind of stuff. So to me, this seems a good thing, and hopefully what I would say is if SideQuest gets big enough, it's like a big enough alternative where more people do know about it. And also, if they could have an app on the iPhone where it's got these URLs included, and it is a one-stop shop alongside the Oculus Quest, the Oculus app, then people could still promote their stuff through SideQuest, sell their games through SideQuest, even though. So hopefully it could get to that point. There is this issue, of course, like Guy mentioned, of getting exposure for your game. If it's not on the main thing, it's missing out on at least 90% of the exposure it could otherwise get.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it's just primarily confusion, Gary? I mean, is that Facebook's motivation? They just don't want to confuse like Joe Schmo and Sally Walmart?
I think curation is a big thing, and I think they've looked at Sony and Xbox and stuff like this. And you mentioned the thing that Xbox had, Anthony, but I don't know. I can't really speak to that. But Sony have a heavy curation as well. Or, yeah, I mean, I say heavy curation. There's a lot of stuff that gets through, but they do have a curation process, and developers have to sort of apply to that. And I think Facebook are just trying to go down that same path with this sort of this console as they see it. They think that this as a console needs to have quite a heavy curation on the surface. But by allowing this, again, I still think it's a great thing overall, even though it probably doesn't help with the marketing side and stuff like that. So I can take that point on board as well, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully websites like Upload VR, Road to VR, they can help developers a lot in this regard in terms of they have these hidden pages, right? And so hopefully some of the websites that cover VR will look for some of the best content that isn't going to be on the store, but the page is there. They could have an article about it, and then they could have a link to like where you can get the, you can pay for the URL or whatever that gets it on your Quest. But it is going to be difficult. Yeah, I mean, you're eliminating 90% of the eyeballs for sure. Okay, so I wanted to go to a slightly different topic. I mean, obviously we're going to get to Quest 2 in a major way here in just a second. But before we do that, I'm just curious, for your guys' opinion on Oculus and the marketing, because this is something that I've seen really since this began with Oculus. I always feel like I don't know what it is about their marketing that bothers me so much, but it just seems like when it comes to release dates, when it comes to knowing like, wait, is this on Rift or is this on Quest, or is it only on Quest? Is it timed? Like there's all these weird things that happen. For example, you go back to Vader Immortal. Like for a while we thought Vader Immortal was like an exclusive Quest game, and then like 2 weeks later we find out it isn't. And there's all these little things, and what I'm trying to figure out, so this is a montage of a bunch of different games that have been announced very recently, and I believe it's like this game right here. So the Climb 2, that little tiny print says captured on PC. Okay, so is there a Rift version? We don't know, because like Facebook is basically saying everything is Quest 2 and Quest. We don't really know. Like Myst, okay, here's Myst. Myst is coming to Quest 2 and Quest. Is there a Rift version? We don't know. Now, I don't know if this is like, if Facebook is like, well, we'll let the third parties handle that. Or are they deliberately telling the third parties, don't say anything about that right now. We just want to highlight Quest. Chris, why don't I go to you with this? Do you find any of this strange at all? Or is it might just be for me because like I do have VRGameRankings.com, my little VR fan site sort of thing. And I do like release dates, and I like to know like I like to put some of these games in the Rift rankings, but I don't know if there's even going to be a PCVR version. So it might just be irritating me because I have a website. But I just didn't know if anybody else was like confused by any of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it is confusing. I think they'd get a lot more with their marketing if they just, planned out a bit more and had release dates on the store page or something, upcoming releases, and it was all very clear. I mean, they could have, you kind of need VR game rankings to even try to figure out what's going on in this weird Oculus world we live in. So yeah, they really could do much better than with that. I was thinking to your point of how it said like captured on PCVR, I wonder if eventually Oculus is going to do a thing where you buy the game once, like it's cross-play, but when you have a link cable plugged in, it's like the PC graphics of the game, or if AirLink ever comes out, it'll just stream from your PC because it's on the same network, and then if you don't have a PC, it would be lower res. I don't know. I just thought of that. I was like, maybe that would
Carmack
be cool.
hinted at enabling some kind of multi-tier rendering or things like that, but then he said probably nobody's going to use it. Like all the things that he spent time on, like the Time War players and all that. Very few developers use them. They're great. They're awesome, but it takes a bit of extra time to develop with them. So I have a feeling it's the same thing where they could probably develop something, but the most developers probably wouldn't be using that.
Yeah.
Gary, just going back to this, like the way Oculus does their marketing, what do you think about the idea of like a game just being on the Oculus store? There was no forewarning whatsoever. For example, there's like a racing game that is on the Oculus Quest store. I forget what it's called, like The Void or something like that. It just came out of the blue. I never ever heard of it ever. Do you think that's a good idea? Is that a good idea for the developer to have a sneak attack like that? I know there's like an excitement of like, oh, a new game. It hits like the Oculus Quest subreddit and everybody's like, oh, new game just hit the store. There's an excitement for never knowing about something, and then all of a sudden it's available. You can buy it now. And then the flip side of the coin is you find out about it like a month in advance, and you know that this game's coming in late September, and then the developer is like tweeting things about it, and they release like a new trailer, and then another week goes by and they give you the final date. Like the difference between a sneak attack and like more of a planned release, because it seems like a lot of Oculus stuff just freaking shows up at the last second.
Yeah, and I don't know about the best way to market a game, honestly, from that point of view. Because it feels like Population 1 has been... When is that coming out? What do we know? We've got a date on a game like Population 1, because there's so much like behind the scenes discussion. Not behind the scenes. I'm not talking about behind the scenes. I'm just talking like people mentioning it, alluding to it on certain podcasts and things like that. But it still feels like we don't know when the date of that is coming, and that's one way to market a game and create buzz. But then again, maybe for a game like, I think it was Void Racer. Is it Void Racer that game? I think it's something like that. But yeah, for a game like that, it might work better for something like that to just release it and see what happens. This is marketing stuff, and I'm useless at marketing anything, so I don't know the best way of doing anything like that. But yeah, I think there's different ways to do different things, and all of these developers, because it's so early on in VR, they're all trying different stuff, aren't they, really, at the moment?
Yeah. Guy, do you have any takes on the way Oculus markets this stuff? Has anything jumped out to you about it? Or, I mean, from your angle, you're probably fine. You don't really worry about what all these other games are doing.
No, I mean, I'm not really knowledgeable in the marketing side of things. So I do find it odd that, yes, you have to dig to find information on whether it's Quest only or PC only. And they could do a better job at that. Yeah.
Okay, real quick, before we get into Oculus Quest 2, one last thing I wanted to mention is Assassin's Creed and Splinter Cell VR. So, like, these are absolutely massive franchises. These are these are big games, like Assassin's Creed VR. How many of us have dreamed of being in Assassin's Creed in VR? It's one of the first things I thought about after getting VR, because for me, one of the most exciting things about VR is like visiting some like other time, and like walking down the streets of Rome way back in those ancient times, or being in Egypt or whatever, all the different things that Assassin's Creed has done. And, you're walking through crowds of people and people are bustling by. to have all of that happen in VR would be incredible. It's almost like time travel, and it seems absolutely perfect. It's ideal. Like those of us that have played LA Noire, the VR case files, walking around like 1950s or whatever Los Angeles, like I enjoyed that more than the actual game, just cars driving by and seeing old stores and stuff like that. So Assassin's Creed VR, absolutely massive. Splinter Cell, another huge, incredible game. Gary, which platform are these games coming to? Because I don't know that, I mean, we have to assume they're coming to Quest 2 and Quest, but is there going to be a PC VR version of either of these?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know either. I think yeah, it's Quest that they're focusing on. That's the takeaway, isn't it? Because we don't know if they're coming to the PC. That's the takeaway. Facebook are focusing on Quest, and that's all we can say at the moment. With games like that, like Assassin's Creed and stuff, with these big, and Splinter Cell, a game which has been, Splinter Cell especially has been like craved over by the fans of that game for a long time on flat gaming, and now it's coming to VR. You would expect it to be quite a big deal for those people. But then again, if it's going to be on Quest and it's going to have sort of the how you say it, Anthony, like the questical kind of thing, where it's got these toned down graphics and it's been designed around that system. Is that going to affect how it's received by these fans, these long-time fans of the franchise? Because you would think a game like Splinter Cell or Assassin's Creed especially, that would be perfectly suited for PC VR kind of systems. And yet I think the focus, the primary system that they're being developed for now it's got to be Quest. So yeah, in one way it's a good thing, but in another way, I think it could harm certain people's perceptions of that game.
Chris, I don't know if you were paying much attention to like Assassin's Creed and Splinter Cell, but it was like a year ago. It was like a year ago this time, or maybe even a little bit more than a year ago, because I think it was whenever E3 was last year. We heard about this. We heard about Splinter Cell VR. We heard about Assassin's Creed VR. We heard about some kind of deal with Ubisoft, some kind of agreement that Oculus had, but it was kind of like a rumor type thing, and we didn't get all the details of it. And so now here we are a year later, and they make it official. They're like, yeah, this is happening. Assassin's Creed VR, Splinter Cell VR. And when I first saw that, I was watching Facebook Connect, and when I first saw that, I'm like, oh, great. Okay, let me see the Assassin's Creed trailer. Trailer, yeah. Splinter Cell, where's the trailer? And we didn't get a trailer for either one. We didn't get any footage or anything, which makes me think, here's my theory. My theory is back then, they were working on a PCVR Assassin's Creed and a PCVR Splinter Cell. They had started work on that. And at some point, Oculus was in their boardrooms and they made this decision. Maybe that's when Brandon Reed walked out the door. But they made their decision. We're all mobile all the time, baby. It's a mobile world. So call up Ubisoft. Tell them to stop what they're doing. Forget that PCVR crap. Get yourself a Snapdragon 835. Get yourself an XR2 development station. Forget PCVR. Because we don't have any footage, no screenshots, and that was well over a year ago. So do you think, obviously this is total speculation, but what do you think about that thought process?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Because if these games are really going to be, the full-on, really big games, these will take 4 years to develop. So I think they're probably still, very early on. We saw, Medal of Honor at last year's Connect, and, it's still not out yet. And that was very alpha software. So it's not as hard as people think it would be to reduce a game for Quest, especially if it's a giant development studio. They port to consoles all the time and they release higher graphics on PC. It's kind of just
doing it well. That's hard.
Yeah, doing it well is hard. That's true. But I feel like they could get a team of 10, 20 good people that can port it to Quest, and then they're still making it for PC. It seems like none of these deals with Oculus don't end up on Steam VR or other platforms. Like they all eventually will get there. So yeah, I think they probably called up and said, hey, this isn't going to be PC only anymore. But I don't think they said, hey, don't release on PC either.
I think the Walking Dead, the way they did it, where they released the PC and then they release on Quest, I think most AAA studios will go down that route because that's what gives them the most sales, essentially. You cover everything. It just takes a little more time to obviously port it down. But that's what gives you the best experience, and I think that's what makes the gamers happy, because the ones who have a PC and who can play through their Quest wirelessly or through Link, they will have the option to get the better graphics that they have because they have a beefy PC. So I think going down that route is probably the best way for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And the good news is, like, The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, it's coming on October 13th. We were wondering a long time, when is that actually going to make it? And looking at all the trailers that have leaked everywhere, I mean, not leaked, but like the gameplay footage and all of that from these various YouTubers that were able to get the Oculus Quest 2 in advance, it looks like it's a pretty good port, which that's pretty amazing that they were able to get that thing working good on Quest hardware. But yeah, let's go ahead and dig into the Oculus Quest 2. So we've had days to think about this. It was probably a roller coaster ride for a lot of us because we were shocked and amazed. It was shock and awe. What do they call it when, the Iraq war or whatever? Shock and awe, whatever they called it, right? But it was like that on Monday, just blown away by what's going on here. Then we got the actual real information, of course, on Wednesday, and then all the reactions and all the different theories about everything over the last couple of days. But now we have a number of days behind us. We've had some good night's sleeps a few nights after all of this has happened. And so we're able to kind of reflect on this and understand what's going on here. Now, I did a show Friday night where I talked about the 10 best and worst things about the Oculus Quest 2. And look, I'll be honest, a lot of my like I do theatrics. I try to go over, I'm like a character almost sometimes on my show. So I hope people don't take me 100% seriously when I do this. Like, I'm trying to like be an entertainer, man. I might be failing miserably, but I try to do that. But one of the things I talked about this Oculus Quest 2, and I want to get your guys' opinions on this. I said repeatedly, this is not a Quest 2. And so I got caught up in that number 2 because I come from a long lineage of video game nut jobs from back in the old Atari, Sega, Nintendo days, where if you put a 2 on something or you put a 3 on something or a 4 on something, like, it's supposed to be like this generational leap, and like I remember back in the days, Super Nintendo and then Nintendo 64, you see a screenshot for a Nintendo 64 game and it's like, whoa, it's a new generation, right? And so you hear something like the Oculus Quest 2 and you think, oh my God, is there going to be an entirely new library of games? Is there all kinds of like technology in here that's going to take things to a new level? And in my opinion, it's essentially a Quest 1.5, but they squeezed an XR2 chip in there at the last possible second to give it a little extra future proofing. But I really don't see any other next gen, like I don't see any other generational leap type stuff in here. But at the same time, I do need to back up and say, dude, it's $299. Like, I'm asking for eye tracking and all this stuff. Remember, it's $299. So, Chris, let me go over to you first. What do you think about this idea where, I'm triggered and I'm like, this is not a Quest 2? What do you think about all of that?
Yeah, it's weird because all the products I buy that are iterated by one number, they're not really generational leaps anymore. I guess that's, what we've come to. Like, even in my self-driving car company, whenever we release a new product, does the same stuff. I mean, it's almost the same thing, runs the same software, let's say, right? But it doesn't. It's still like one generation newer. So even consoles, I feel like they're can play all the old games. They're very much PC oriented. Like a new graphics card comes out, and it still plays all the old games. So it seems like that's at least where Oculus is for now. But I think you're right that this isn't really a 2, because there will be a point in time in VR where suddenly there's eye tracking, there's like, all this facial tracking stuff. Maybe the controllers are entirely redesigned, and then maybe it is a real 2, but there must just be some other term for that nowadays in the new marketing terms. It'd be like, maybe it'd just be a new product or something. It wouldn't be called a Quest anymore. I don't know.
Yeah. Guy, what about you? What do you think about this idea? Like, do you feel this is like a real Quest 2? Or do you think I'm just getting caught up in semantics with the naming of it?
No, I think you're right. I mean, it's not like the only improvement really is the processor and the screen a little bit. But otherwise, it's the same cameras. It's the same number of cameras. The strap is worse. It's the same lens that we've had on the Oculus Go, which is almost like 2-3 years old at this point. Like nothing new there. And I think it's rushed. I think it was a rushed product, because you look at how they did the battery, where if you buy the strap with the battery, it doesn't charge with the headset. You're gonna need 2 USB cables to charge the whole thing. Like, it seems very botched in some ways, right? And I'm super happy about the processor upgrade, because on the Quest 1, right, it was a 2-year-old processor when it launched, and now we get a proper top of the line, SoC on this. So that's great. It's just a bit unfortunate that, but I understand why they did this upgrade, because the first one was hard to make and they couldn't produce them in enough quantities, right? And it was selling still very well, and they were sold out. So they wanted to get something that's easier to make, that's a little upgrade in some ways. So I understand, why they released it. It just makes sense, because now they're going to be able to make enough for the holidays, and they're going to be able to have a good supply of them. So.
Yeah. So Gary, we're going to go to you, but Gary, I want to ask you like a specific question related to this. I don't know if you remember, but Jason Rubin, there was an interview one time with Jason Rubin, and this was on video, and it might have been Ben Lang. It might have been Ben Lang interviewing Jason Rubin, and they asked Jason Rubin about like a Rift 2. Like the question was like, a next generation Rift. And one of the things Jason Rubin mentioned, he was like, well, we're not going to do a Rift 2. He said something about, like, if you're going to do a Rift 2, to really have a 2, it needs to be like this like generational leap where you're like severing ties with, like, you know what I mean? Like, he was almost like saying like it needs to have like all this extra, like a whole new level of stuff. Do you remember that interview? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Vaguely. I vaguely remember him saying something like that, and I think you brought that up probably on a VR Roundtable episode or one of your own shows as well at some point as well. Yeah, I do vaguely remember that, and it's an interesting point. But as Chris said earlier, it's almost like if you would see a screenshot of taking consoles as an example again, like of a PS4 game and then a PS5 game, a single screenshot wouldn't scream at you, this is the next generation. And it does feel like we're not back in the 90s with the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo 64 and stuff like that. We're not going to get those kinds of jumps. However, I'm sort of siding with you, Anthony, on this. Initially, I was really excited with the XR2 announcement with this, or, the leak. But the more you look into it, both yourself, Guy, as well, and spoke, it feels a little bit like 1.5. And in fact, I wanted to mention there was an interview with Ben Lang on Voices of VR, where he was speaking about the Oculus Quest 2, his impressions of it. And it was very interesting because that reined in some of my expectations with this device. He was saying he treats it as more or less a Quest S at the moment. However, in the future, as it gets certain updates, and more functionality, and also hopefully, I don't know if he mentioned this, but hopefully some of its own games that are designed for this system, then he could probably come to consider it a Quest 2 at that point. At the moment, it isn't that. And, I think that reined in my own expectations. A little bit disappointing, but it sort of makes sense when you see all these reviews, because when we were on Sebastian's show on Wednesday, we didn't know all this information. We didn't see the reviews at that point. And it's interesting to come back and perhaps, my excitement and enthusiasm for it has been reined in a little bit, I would say.
Yeah, Chris, going back over to you, one of the things I've heard about the Quest 2, like why they did that name, is because this is cheaper than the other. Like if they were to call it like Quest Plus or Quest Lite or Quest Deluxe or Quest Ultra, or, just any little name that didn't put the 2 on there, that the problem with that is like this is cheaper and it's also better. So it's kind of a weird conundrum. Do you buy into that, or do you think this could have been Quest Plus and it would have been fine because they've discontinued the original Quest?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's very hard to say because I feel like the average consumer would, see the Quest ads on TV and they saw the price that it was, $4.99 or $3.99, you know what I mean? So I feel like if they saw a Quest S ad, it wouldn't be immediately thought to them they'd be like, oh, this is like $500, $600. Like, just looking at that, I think most people would say, oh, it must be more expensive. So I guess there's, that does make a little bit of sense. A point I wanted to bring up is kind of to Guy's point and Gary's point. I think they're releasing the hardware clearly before the software is ready. There's no devs that have released like this 90 hertz mode. I mean, this is when they should have given this to developers, let's say, like to most developers. But I think they just want to get this cheaper thing out there, and they know it'll get better over time. But you're right, maybe it's not 2 yet, but it'll get there. I mean, just like the Quest could have launched with hand tracking, it might have been bigger, but the Quest maybe also this is just like a new product ecosystem where you release hardware before the software's ready. It seems to kind of be where the world is going. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and another thought that I have on this whole thing is like yeah, there is a part of me that is like major disappointed from the fact that they use those same exact cameras, because I really wanted full color pass through, and yeah. I thought that would be amazing. But Guy, $299, man. So like it's pretty unbelievable that this thing is $299. Like how much of a loss do you think they might be taking on every single one of these babies?
I don't know. They probably calculated how many games each user on average consumes, and then subtracted that to the price, the 30% that they get. And they probably are selling at a loss and expecting people to buy X number of games to. I'm not a hardware expert, so it's hard for me to know how much those things cost. But the processor itself is pretty expensive because it's brand new, right? So maybe they got a special deal. I mean, it's probably also a scale thing where they probably bought a whole lot because they knew they would sell a lot of headsets, so they could probably get a slightly better price there. I think the price is a good thing, but I saw online a lot of people were confused because they're like, wait, so it's cheaper than the old one but better? So a lot of people have trouble understanding that. So
yeah, it's just the way it ended up happening, right? But actually, Guy, I want to ask you about a very specific thing before I forget about this. And so Wi-Fi 6, okay? So, but wait before you answer. So the Qualcomm XR2 supports Wi-Fi 6. However, John Carmack, when John Carmack was in his Horizon discussion, this was after he did his unscripted Facebook Connect talk, then he went into Horizon. A lot of people probably haven't seen this, but there is a discussion. Somebody did live stream it, and it is on YouTube. You can find it, like look up John Carmack, Horizon, whatever. But there was a person that immediately asked him about Wi-Fi 6. The problem is, I don't think John Carmack understood what the guy was asking, and so I think he was kind of confused. But here, because I did a show on Friday, and I might have mentioned Wi-Fi 6 at one point, and there was a ton of people in chat that were like, yeah, it has Wi-Fi 6, it has Wi-Fi 6. But here's what I want to know. The Snapdragon XR2 is compatible with Wi-Fi 6, but does that mean that your Quest 2 can communicate with a Wi-Fi 6 router, or does there have to be some kind of like receiver or transmitter or some type of antenna or some type of thing that also needs to be in the Quest 2? Do we know that that's in the Quest 2, or the fact that the Qualcomm... It is? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The Qualcomm released like a little press release and says that the XR2 that the Quest 2 has a Wi-Fi 6 radio in it. So it has their chip to do Wi-Fi, which has Wi-Fi 6. Okay. Now the question is whether it's enabled, or because when you have a Wi-Fi channel, you can have 80 megahertz, 160 megahertz, right? You have different things. So there might be something in the OS that prevents it from being enabled, like just a software thing right now, or maybe it is. I mean, I just don't know anyone with a Wi-Fi 6 that has a headset that can confirm whether it can support something higher than 866 megabit link speed, because that's the limit on the Quest right now, is you can't go higher than 866 megabit. And I think John just misunderstood the question. He probably thought that the person asked about 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi or something like that. But yeah, so it does have a Wi-Fi 6 chip. And so we should, in theory, see better streaming performance on the Quest 2. And the better processor also helps with that. So
yeah, how much of a, like, how big of a difference do you think we're talking about here? Is it like something that only really hardcore, like people that notice like tiny little details, or is it kind of a night and day, or like halfway in between that, or what would you say?
In theory, if I look at the numbers, we should be able to get twice the bit rate that we get right now. Right now, Virtual Desktop gets about 100 megabit, and I think we should be able to do 200 according to the numbers on paper. So that's just in theory, we should be able to do 200, but that's just like a guess right now because I have no idea.
And one other question. So is it possible, though, that like this capability is there, but like Oculus internally has turned that off? So even though the capability is there, you might not be able to use it right away, or we're just not sure?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure. Yeah. I've yet to have someone tell me that they have a Quest 2 and they have a AX router and they get something better than 866. So
interesting. Yeah. I wonder why Oculus, like you would think if this was like really legit, they would make a big deal about it, at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
It is, for me, it is super important. And it makes a huge difference. If you can send the data faster, you save on latency, and you can have a better image quality in the end. So it's very important.
Yeah. Okay. So that's exciting. All right. So now I want to go back and let's go big picture on the Quest 2. So Facebook's strategy, I mean, at the end of the day, it's $299.99. So I gotta forgive like all the little complaints that I have about it. I've got a lot of different complaints about it, but at the end of the day, it's $299.99, and it's got an XR2 in there. But one of the biggest complaints, like the single biggest complaint with the original Quest, is comfort. And I made this argument on Friday night that the biggest problem, like you'll see interviews where people talk about the Quest 2, and then at the very end, and they'll be like, "Yeah, but I can only play it for 40 minutes, and then my head starts hurting." I mean the Quest 1 interviews. Like Jeff Keighley, I remember they were talking to him, and he's like, "Yeah, I love my Quest, but it's not." At the end, he said, "But it's not comfortable." Everybody always goes back to the comfort thing. So, Chris, I want to go to you first. Comfort was the biggest problem. Period. Dot. Now, I argue that they did nothing for this because I believe a 10% drop in weight is so incredibly insignificant, it's not even worth mentioning, really. Now, people will make the argument, but wait, they've got all these accessories and everything. And then I go back to this other argument, and I'm like, wait a minute, who are they marketing this to? Aren't they marketing this to Joe Schmo and Sally Walmart? Isn't this going to be at Walmart, at Costco, at Target, at Best Buy? People just go buy a box, they take it home. Do people really go online and look at accessory lists and stuff? I know we do because we're like hardcore into this. Like I know the VR bubble. Nathan always talks about the VR bubble. We're in the VR bubble. We're going to look at all these accessories and everything. But is your average Joe Blow out there going to look at it? So, Chris, what do you think about the comfort? Like, why did they not address this better, I think?
Yeah, I think it's because it's $299 and, you know, including the Elite strap, let's say, in the box. Now it's
$350.
Even if it's like
$350.
Yeah, $350. Yeah, if it's $350, then suddenly it doesn't have the same impulse buy to it. I mean, when I saw it, you know, $299 and everything, the second pre-orders came out, I bought it. I didn't even think about it. I think that's what they're trying to do for a lot of people. They're just trying to, you know, make them buy it like that. But then after I was like, wait a minute. It doesn't look that comfortable. And then I start looking into it. I'm like, I guess I got to buy the strap, but it's only $50. So it feels like separate purchases to me. So it made it a little easier to swallow. But yeah, I do have like an deluxe audio strap modded Quest. And I mean, it was, you know, pretty bad comfort originally. And I hope it's, even if it's like slightly better with the soft strap, I hope it is. And that would be a big improvement just for the people who don't get the strap. I am glad they have an official solution to comfort now, even though it's not the best solution. Maybe next gen it'll include something more comfortable too.
Headphones, maybe that would be great.
Headphones, please.
On the band, yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
I know.
You know what I really wanted? So they have that like ultra deluxe strap, right? That has the battery it has an extra battery integrated into the back, so it's got the counterweight of the battery, and the battery is like inside there, so it's like a nice, like that was a great idea. But here's the one thing that bothered me about that. So you know how it has these flaps on the side, right? These things that are flapping off. Like when you put the other things on, you got to wiggle it off, and it's got these things that are extending out. What if one of those things that was extending out had like a little contact, you know, like a little battery contact, so that when you snap this thing on, it connects to that contact, and so there's no wire going anywhere. And then another thing I thought is, well, wait a minute. What if that was just the freaking design from Jump Street, and the battery that's in this front is not there at all? There goes 150 grams right there. The 150 grams goes to the back now. Of course, this is now a $399 headset, but comfort solved. Guy, what do you think about the different comfort thoughts?
Yeah, I think that would have been a great idea. Have a better integration, at least with the battery, like you say, to not require a separate wire, a separate cable to charge it. Yeah, that was just probably decided too quickly. They had to release something, so they did something like one team does the other strap, one team designs the headset, and then it's probably a time constraint thing.
Yeah, Gary, I know that there's been a lot of talk in the past about putting the battery on the back, and when we saw the original Santa Cruz prototype, the battery was on the back. But maybe it was after the release of the Oculus Go, because it had that soft strap and people could just lay back on their sofa or their lazy boy chair, or, you know, you take it with you and you're in a hotel room and you're just laying back on the pillow. Do you think that has a lot to do with it? Like Oculus, like if they were to ship it where it had that ultra strap connected with the battery in the back and there was no battery in the front, and they made it like this thing, then it's not quite portable. You know, you're not stuffing it into a tiny bag. Do you think all of that weighed into the thought process?
It might have done, yeah, because on the surface, I really like your idea of just having this Elite strap with the battery in the back, the way that they've released, no battery in the front, so you've got no weight on the front as well from the battery, all the weight is on the back. But then again, they could have done like an elite strap. So they could have kept the battery in the front, shipped it with an elite strap, and then charged a little bit extra, and then given you a very easy option to transfer it over to a fabric strap if you wanted to use it for media consumption while leaning back or something like that. Then again, I don't know. I've not seen every review or anything like that, and some people have the elite strap, some people have the one with the battery even as well. But I think most people have been given that have reviewed it have been given just the initial elite strap. I've not seen any impressions on people that have tried it in that format rather than using the fabric strap. If they've used it for sort of media consumption, even lying flat in their bed or something.
Yeah, Chris, what do you think about the thought that, like, your average Joe Blow, they go buy this thing and they use the included strap, and they use it for a while, then they're like, damn, this thing, it's just not comfortable, and now they're returning it, they're taking it back to Best Buy or whatever. Do you think these people are gonna somehow find out that there are all these other accessories, or maybe in the box, like, there's like some really nice little brochures that show you, hey, stop, wait a minute, before you take this back, or they should have a thing that says, before you take this back to the store, do you know that we have these little accessories that will improve it by leaps and bounds?
Yeah, I mean, I think people will find out. They'll search Oculus Quest 2 uncomfortable, and and they'll be like, oh my gosh, Oculus sells the solution. I'll give them more money because I like my Quest. Or, I like so much about it. So I think it's just a way to suck out more money. I mean, you think even if they put these little connectors on the Quest, that's got to add cost. Like anything that they do, the Quest 2 is like the bare minimum that they could do in terms of ports and like there's no contacts, there's no complexity in the straps. Like it's very, mass producible, I think. Any one of these things. I mean, with the original Rift, like those contacts got screwed up for the headphones. I think they just were like, we're not doing anything special. Like all the complexity will be in the accessories, then people can buy those and they cost extra. But I do wish they did this, but at the same time, it's $299. So I always have to go back to reality a little bit.
Yeah. And also hopefully, like if somebody goes to Walmart or Best Buy, right next to where the Quest 2 is, they'll have some of these elite straps and stuff. So people will see that. They'll be like, oh, like, for example, if you go to Costco has a bundle deal that includes like extra face gaskets, and it includes the battery thing. Like Costco will do these like super deluxe packages that come in a gigantic plastic thing that includes all these extras. And so hopefully people will see that and they'll realize that basically it's $299, but it's like starting at $299. It's kind of billed as you go. Like $299 gets it into your house, and then it keeps going up from there. Because I think it was MameFan had a video on him buying one of these on a spur of the moment type thing, and he bought all these different accessories along with it, and his grand total was like $568 or something with tax. So it does all add up. Okay, so let's get to another topic of the Quest 2, and this is another like contentious topic where it's an unsettled thing. Until we all get this in our homes, we're not going to know for sure. And I'm talking, of course, about the Ipd Adjustment, which a lot of different reviews, I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen all the different videos like Tyrell Wood, Nathy, Mike from Virtual Reality Oasis, Cass and Cherry, Scott Stein from CNET, the guy from Upload VR, all these different people have their reviews, right? And they all kind of mention this Ipd situation. And so for those that don't know, the original Oculus Quest had an Ipd slider, a physical slider that you could adjust from, I think it was 70 millimeters, maybe to 58. I'm not sure. It was something like that. And so you could go all the way out to 70, all the way to 58, and every little step in between because you had that physical slider. Now and then of course the Rift S, no physical adjustment whatsoever. So outliers were really boned bad with the Rift S. Now here it seems like they're trying to do some type of compromise where they don't have the legit slider, And part of the reason might be this is a single panel. So they have to, like, if they make 3 different settings, the thing is the panel has a certain resolution itself, but you're not getting the maximum resolution, because when they're switching to these 3 different locations, it's creating an area that is unusable screen, basically. And so they got to factor that in. So that's why we get this strange resolution of 1832 by 1920, which is probably covering them legally. This is what you're actually going to be able to see with your eyeballs. Probably if you're at the perfect 63 millimeters, which is where it's really intended to be. So that's kind of the background. So we got these 3 separate things that you can slide it to. 63 is perfect native. That's where you really would like to be. You can also go down to 58 and you can bump it up to 68. So we've got some options there, but some people... go ahead.
I don't know if the resolution that they mention is the actual resolution of the panel, like 1832. By 1920, or is it the slightly cramped resolution that you get with the IPD? Because I think it's the native resolution of the panel itself, so that means that you get a little less than 1832 in width. At least that's my belief, but I might be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is if you double 1832 and by 1920, like, this would be like a custom panel. Like, do we really think they're buying a special customized panel? I kind of think it's number 2. I think I think the reason we're getting this like oddball resolution is because they've already taken that into consideration. But I could be wrong. Yep. I could be wrong. We'll probably, I mean, we're gonna have to wait for like iFixit or somebody to like rip the whole thing apart. Yeah. But yeah, so we've got these 3 different settings. Gary, why don't I go over to you first? So when it comes to IPD, I mean, this is always an issue. Every headset. The thing is with headsets, it's like it's hard to make a judgment about a headset. We make judgments about HP Reverb G2s and valve indexes and we make all these judgments. But the thing is, you really got to get these things into your own house, because your cheekbones, your eye sockets, your face shape, your head shape, it all factors in. These things are so personal. You can't really take another person's advice. You really have to get one of these things in your own damn house. Gary, when it comes to IPDs, how have you fared with all the various headsets that you've had? Have you been pretty lucky? Because you're not really like on those outlier ranges, right?
No, yeah. So I've been very lucky with it. I've never had a problem with the IPD issues that some people do. So this one, I'm around 63. I usually set the valve index to around 63, so I'm sort of lucky in that respect, honestly.
Oh my god.
But yeah, I'll take your point, and I understand what you're saying about the panel and how it renders it, because with these 3 settings, what it does is, from my understanding, is as you move it out, it will change what is being displayed in front of these 2 lenses slightly in order to accommodate that new IPD setting. Some people, I've seen some reviews, or somebody mentioned this, where you can actually sort of move it slightly in between. Yeah. And I'm wondering how that works with the software interpretation of that, how it can sort of adjust intermediate adjustments based on the software. I don't know how that works, or if it just helps with the clarity of and it's still slightly off with the screen placement, maybe. I don't know.
Well, you know what? I know exactly what you're talking about. I forget which review it was, but yeah, the guy basically like nudged it kind of in between, where it was kind of just, and he was worried, like, if I set it down on a table, is it going to accidentally go back into its slot, or will it stay in my little in-between nudge? And apparently he told an Oculus representative about this, and the Oculus guy was like, you don't want to do that, because the software is designed to, like, you're actually
to have the 3
yourself.
settings. Yeah.
So,
it's got to be that way. It's got to be that as soon as it clicks into one of these 3 positions, then the left eye and the right eye is rendered to match that position. Whereas if you've got it halfway between the 2, then it's not being rendered quite right, I would imagine. But yeah, again, we've not got these things in our hands, so we don't know, do we?
Yeah, but you're sitting pretty.
What was that? The Ars
It
Technica?
was, yeah, the one that was very negative. That was from that one. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That Ars Technica review, like so convoluted, so much stuff. Like I need to read that article like 5 different times to understand what's going on there. Chris, let me go up to you. So when it comes to IPDs, what do you think about all this? Like all the different headsets you've had and IPDs, has this been like a really big thorn in your side at all, or have you been pretty lucky when it comes to IPDs? And what do you think is going to be the situation here with this Quest 2 for you?
Yeah, I've been pretty lucky. I think my IPD is like 63 and a half.
God, you guys are killing me.
I know. So even with the Go, it was like perfect for me, and I haven't even ever really had to adjust it. But I think I hope at least that Oculus is converging on a solution that is cheap and not too mechanical, but works really well. It's hard to say with the reviews because, like you said, it's so varied. But I mean, maybe 3 positions is enough. Maybe they've done so much testing, and the lenses are obviously a lot clearer than lenses used to be, so the sweet spot is bigger. Maybe it's okay if there's a few millimeter gap in like where your eyes lay on those lenses, and it won't provide discomfort. But it's hard to say. It probably always will for some people, until there's like an insanely customizable headset like the Index.
Yeah, the problem is, so here's the thing, guys. If you're an outlier like me and you're in the 70 range, you are getting boned with this headset. In fact, Carmack said as much himself. Because the thing is, when you move it out to 68, and then if your eyes are even outside of that, you're not going to sit in the sweet spot. You're compromised. Your field of view. I had a Rift S temporarily. And I didn't have blurriness. I didn't have scale problems. Like none of that was fine. That like the geometry, everything was okay. The only side effect I had was my field of view was like, chunked in. And Carmack was mentioning that if you're really, you're out there at 70, 71, something like that, you're actually going to see the edge of the screen in addition to having your FOV chopped a little bit. Guy, what do you think about all this? Like, I mean, until we get to some future where we have not one size fits all, until we have custom headsets, this is always going to be kind of an issue. Why do human heads have to vary so goddamn much?
Yes, it's unfortunate, but yeah, they have to choose something. I think the Quest Slider was pretty good, even though the label popped up all the time, which was super annoying. I'm 61.5, so even the Go and the Go worked pretty well for me, even though I'm off the 63.5 range that it has. But yes, I do know a couple of people who have skinnier heads or wider heads, and it is a problem for them, and it sucks that they have a subpar experience because of that. I don't know a good solution. I think what they had on the Quest was something that worked pretty well, but maybe too tricky to make. I don't know.
Yeah, so I wonder, like, if it even would be possible when you have a single panel like this. Would it even be possible to have a slider? Because you have to have that software. You still have that.
You can, yeah.
So I wonder how much money they're saving. I mean, the goal here was $299. I mean, they had to get this at $299. So, I guess we kind of get it. Another
but
thing,
it's a problem that it's not a slider, though. You have to take off the headset and adjust things. So most people are not ever going to adjust this, or they will by accident and they won't even notice. So I think that's a problem. In the future, what will happen for sure is that we're going to have eye tracking, and it's going to be able to determine what's your IPD right there. The camera's and it is going to auto adjust automatically. But until we get there, we have to have those annoying little things.
That's a good point as well, because normally, like on the Valve Index or the original Quest, you adjust it and you see it. In fact, I think I'm just remembering, I think a reviewer mentioned this as well, where you adjust it based on how clear things look in real time as you're adjusting it. You can't really do that with this one, which is an issue. And like he said, it's probably going to make people just not adjust it, or just have a slightly downgraded experience, or go out of their way and not have a clear like A and B comparison within the headset in real time. You're going to judge it based on taking the headset off each time.
Yeah, it was either one of the articles or one of the reviews. They mentioned talking to an Oculus representative, and the Oculus person told them what you were saying there, Guy, where they don't even move it, or they accidentally move it completely in the wrong direction. And so I think a lot of Oculus, see, the thing is, a lot of their decisions have nothing to do with hardcore VR players. Again, who are they trying to address? They're trying to address millions upon millions of people. They don't really care about the hardcore people. And so the average Joe Blow out there, they accidentally slide the thing completely in the wrong direction. And then they get a compromised experience, and they think the whole thing is garbage. So I think Oculus is highly concerned about that. One other thing I'll say too is Palmer Luckey. I can't wait to see his blog where he says this headset is not for me. We haven't seen it yet, right? I guess he hasn't tried one of these yet. He hasn't commented on it. I'm very curious to see what because me and Palmer, I think, have like identical IPDs. So if he says this shit is totally unusable, then I know, damn it, I'm boned too. But what else was I going to say about this?
What was the Go for you, Anthony? Was it hard to use, or is it too blurry?
Well, for me, the Go. The Go was fine, but it did cause eye strain. But I never would play the Go for like an hour and a half or anything. So it never really, like, I would always play the Go in like very short bursts. So it didn't bother me that much. If I was using it every day and trying to play for like an hour and a half, that's where I'd probably notice more issues. Chris, I wanted to, I'm going to bring up one other thing. And Chris, I'll get your theory on this. Why not? I mean, I've always wondered this, okay? So why not manufacture this headset, the Oculus Quest 2, and just have it at 63? Don't have any of this crap. Just have it at 63. And then on the website, which is special order only, they have a version for tiny heads and a version for really large heads. It costs $100 more. And I know the answer to this. The answer is, the factory, the way the molds and all of that. But goddamn, man, I guess it's just unrealistic, right? Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, especially with the Quest being that you can just give it to your friend real quick, and I mean, I do wish that maybe there'll be some company that provides highly customized Quests. Kind of like how there's some companies that'll make like gold iPhones or something. It's kind of going to be that same thing. But yeah, I think it's just you have to accommodate. I give it to my mom. Let's say I know her IPD is a lot less than mine. I'll just click it in, and it's maybe not perfect, but it's better than if it was left in the middle. Or I think we'll pick up on this stuff. Like when I give it to you, we'll put it out all the way, and then I'll put it in the middle. So. Yeah, it is a complicated issue. I wish there was an easier way to deal with all these different head types and IPDs.
Yep, it is an issue. Okay, Gary, I'm going to switch it over to you. And what else did you want to talk about in relationship to the Quest 2? We talked about the Well, we didn't really talk about the screen very much. Did you want to talk about what do you think 1832 by 1920 per eye, not quite 2160 by 2160. Actually, here's what I'll ask you, Gary. Is there any chance that this headset could possibly be your daily driver, as incredible as that would seem? I mean, you've got a valve index. You would think this would be crazy for this to like bypass your valve index, but it is going to have a higher resolution. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, it won't be used for my PCVR ever. I'll probably try it, certainly not with the link, and I'd love to try the streaming thing as well. Of course, I mean, I'm definitely going to try that because that's valuable to me for using. Because where I am at the moment is where I play VR. It's in my office, but if I can go into my living room or something like that, I've got people over. Not that we can have people over, of course, but if we can eventually get people over again, then I can use the Quest and stream stuff over there. But the thing is, I don't think it's going to replace PCVR. And there was a lot of people saying about the G2 comparison and stuff like this, only because I think with the link you got compressed video, and it's never going to look as good as pure with a HDMI connection, a raw feed from your PC. So I still think that the Valve Index will be the headset that I use for PC 90% of the time. Well, more than that, 99% of the time. But I am looking forward to the Quest 2 for primarily standalone, and I'll certainly try the streaming as well.
Gary, real quick, do you own any Oculus headsets right now at this very moment?
No, I don't. I've not even realised until you just said, yeah, no. So I saw my original Quest a few weeks ago. Yeah, so I've not got any Oculus headsets now, no.
Do you ever feel like I have this idea when it comes to Oculus where I just like Revive just doesn't do it for me, and like the Valve Index control, like, for example, like I'm playing Medal of Honor. Well, now Medal of Honor's on Steam, so that's not a good one. But like Lone Echo 2 or something, assuming it's not on Steam and all of that, I want to play it on the Oculus store with the real Oculus controllers. You know what I mean? I want to have that native experience. So I feel like I've always got to own some type of Oculus headset so I can get that native experience. Is there any part of that for you, or will you be playing big Oculus PCVR games on your Valve Index anyway and just like dealing with Revive?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try both. I mean, I suppose the thing is, I'll try each game and see how it operates. It's like I went back into Lone Echo when I got my Valve Index. I tried Lone Echo, and it was it was a pain to play it with the Valve Index. It wasn't a great experience initially. It might be a little bit better now. I don't know. But yeah, I think you can't underestimate the value of having these controllers which match the games perfectly. I think that it can be a big deal. However, you're going to have to balance whether that's worth taking the drop in fidelity and the drop in, the very slight latency issues and stuff like this. I judge each game on its merits really with that kind of stuff. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. The controllers can be a big deal for sure.
Yeah, and so let's go up to Chris. Basically, kind of the same question for you. Is there any possibility that you could look at this headset as being your daily driver? What do you think about like Oculus, like using this as a PCVR headset? Could you, or do you think this is just going to be your Quest type thing?
Yeah, I mean, I probably will just because I don't have my Rift S with me. I'm guessing the Rift S would have been, slightly better without the compression and all this stuff. But it was even the original Link was pretty good. Like it wasn't, terrible. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. So if it's any better than that, if it gets any better than the original Link, I will be happy. And I've mostly been using standalone when I have a chance to play VR, just for how quick it is to like put on and get set up. So yeah, the Quest 2 will be my daily driver. Yeah.
Regarding the whole Link aspect though, and like the resolution and everything, do you feel the same way as Gary? Like the compression is, because I hear different things about that. Like some people say no, USB-C can pass the full entire 1832 by 1920 per eye, but then other people say, yeah, but your graphics card has to like do that compression. And if you don't have the best graph, and it's like sending it in a compressed form, and then actually maybe we should talk to Guy about that. Guy, what do you think, like, what is your answer to this question? Some people will say you can get a perfect, awesome experience using link cable. It's not degraded at all if you have like the right hardware and that type of thing, or is that just impossible? Like if we had a little HDMI thing on there somehow, would that always be better?
Yeah, it will always be better if it's raw.
Damn it.
You get, you, but here's the thing. Oculus Link does some weird color correction on it, so the image appears more washed out than it should on the Quest today. Virtual Desktop, on the other hand, replicates the colors a lot better, so you'll get more vibrant colors, deeper blacks. So it looks more like an HDR, a raw signal. But it depends for, if you're looking for it, you will notice the slight differences in color because there's slight compression on colors. Dark areas are a little more mushy, but it depends on the game. Some games you won't notice it at all because it's very bright and but for some other games you will. So it really depends on the person and on the game that you play.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sebastian asked, will Wi-Fi 6 make a perfect experience in VR desktop? I know we kind of talked about it, but I don't know. Will it be perfect?
It won't be perfect, but it will be a lot better. It should be a lot better, especially if you have a Wi-Fi 6 router. It means that the bandwidth you can get between your computer and your router will be better. And yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to testing it and seeing how it performs. But yeah, it should be better.
Speaking of virtual desktop, I've got this trailer that is running on the screen right now, which is Eye of the Temple. There's a demo that's on Steam, and this is one of the most room scale games we've seen since probably Unseen Diplomacy. And so this is one of these things where you really would like to have a big giant open space and a wireless headset. I haven't tried this yet myself. Have you tried this, Guy? Using like your...
I haven't personally, but I heard some people have played it and really enjoyed it. So the room scale experiences without a wire are definitely a lot better. I play ping pong, 11 table tennis, right? And I couldn't even imagine myself playing that with a wire, right? I'd probably trip over or. So yeah. Personally, I much prefer a wireless experience no matter what.
Yeah, I've tried this demo on my Valve Index, and like I start to get... actually, one time I was playing this game on my Valve Index. No joke. I tried to jump to I physically jumped to one of the platforms that you're on, and I landed on my PlayStation Move controllers and almost jacked them up. Like I didn't have everything cleared out in my play space. I was just trying to wing it. And like I got immersed into the game, and like there was a block that was just a couple feet away, and I like physically jumped to it and almost jacked up my Move controllers. But yeah, this is a really cool, interesting design. It's kind of cool because like room scale is kind of dead for the most part, but this developer doesn't seem to think so. And really cool mixed reality trailer as well. Okay, well, let's go back over to Gary. We're going to go ahead and wind it down here in a minute. I was just wondering, is there any other major issues or any other major thoughts about Quest 2 or this week, all the revelations that have come out? Is there anything else that you wanted to mention or talk about?
Not really, no. I think... I'm excited to get the Quest 2 overall. I mean, I was probably a little bit more excited on Monday than I am today after the leaks. I thought it was going to be a bigger deal. And hopefully Ben Lang is right on his impressions that at the moment he considers it a Quest S, but given time with the updates, perhaps some bigger games and stuff like this, then it could eventually become what he perceives as like a Quest 2. I think that would be a great thing.
Oh, Gary. One thing we didn't mention, so has Ben Lang done like a full, like does he have one and he's done a full review and everything? I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I believe it's his reviews on Road to VR.
Okay, because he's usually the best for talking about like binocular overlap and like glare and God rays and like chromatic aberration and all of that stuff. And because we've heard some different things about like glare and God rays. For example, Nathy mentioned that there's glare, but the way he described it sounded like God rays. And John Carmack mentioned that I believe there's a difference between the two. Some people say no, it's basically the same thing, but you're seeing it in different ways. But I believe there's a difference between the two. And I'm just curious, what's your thought on that? What's your thoughts on that?
that impression of there being a difference between glare and God rays, as far as my recollection is, I seem to remember Ben Lang mentioning something about that when the Valve Index came out. And the time, I think most people just called it God rays pretty much all the time. And then Ben Lang created this, or his interpretation was there was two separate things. And the Valve Index had glare, which was like a movement of light around the perimeter of the lenses.
It swirls around,
Yeah, and God rays comes out. So if you've got like some white text on a black background, it comes out from the text and expands outwards. And some people seem to be affected by one or the other more or less. And so, you know, it's difficult without trying this stuff, even with trusted reviewers and even with people that seem to have the same impression as you. It can sometimes change from headset to headset depending on how much you're affected by either of these things. So I'm interested to see that as well.
Yeah, and also like your cheekbones, your eye sockets, that affects these things as well. Some people notice glare more or less based on their facial features and that sort of thing. Guy, going over to you, have you heard anything regarding like chromatic aberration, glare, God rays, anything along these lines? Like, do you have any concerns with that? Have you ever been affected by any of these headsets where you tried a certain headset and you're like, oh man, I can't even deal with this headset?
Right, I can't use the Valve Index because of the glare.
Wow.
It's just it distracts me way too much. So I don't mind the God rays on the Go, which is probably what's going to be. It's going to be very similar to the Quest 2, so I can deal with that pretty fun. Yeah, okay.
Do you think it's because like the lenses and all that, you're going to get basically the same kind of God rays from?
Well, it's the same lens, and it's an LCD panel, so it should be very similar in terms of.
Yeah, that's true. So I guess if you are okay with the Go, you'll probably be okay with this. Yeah, Chris, what do you think?
Yeah.
I was going to say, I just looked up the article from Ben Lang, and he said the Quest 2 lenses are tuned pretty well. There's chromatic aberration, pupil swim, and smearing are effectively invisible. Oh. But he said God rays are similar to the Quest 1. But it sounds like everything else is pretty nice. So.
Okay. And just one last question before we bounce out of here. What is your, like, when it comes to upcoming VR games? I'll go back over to you, Gary. I mean, we got some trailers and stuff for some of these new games, but we also, of course, have like Medal of Honor and Population 1, and like, I guess Lone Echo 2 still exists, I hope. I hope that wasn't a casual, like, I mean, I know it'll exist on Quest 2 and Quest 1 eventually, I guess, but I hope the PCVR version still exists. But do you have, like, is there any particular game you're really jazzed for, Gary? Maybe later this year? Or is, like, Medal of Honor, is that your most wanted game, December 11th? What do you think?
Yeah, this is a tough one because there's nothing that's really, really exciting me, honestly. I want to try Population 1, even though I'm not really a multiplayer guy. I think I could get into that one on the Quest, for example. What's the Star Wars game?
Tales from the Edge of the Galaxy.
Sorry, the PC one, PSVR. Yeah, Squadrons. So I'm excited to try that as well. Medal of Honor, probably a little bit less so, although it's got a single player campaign, which is what I'd love to go through. So they're the main ones that are hitting me at the moment. And that trailer that's on my screen at the moment, that was just on my screen, the Jurassic Park thing.
Yeah.
That looks pretty good. And I was mentioning on Sebastian's show about the graphics and stuff like this. And I like that style. I just don't associate that style with Jurassic Park kind of games necessarily. But I'm looking forward to try that as well. Really, I suppose just to finish off, my thoughts in terms of games, I'm not absolutely excited about any one particular game right now, which is unfortunate, but maybe that'll change.
Yeah, Chris, I know you're so busy with like the self-driving cars thing and you barely can play anything. So you kind of, I imagine you'll just occasionally turn on your VR headset and just see if something shows up that's new, a demo or something that you can try. But is there anything that you've been jonesing for, or like any of these game announcements excite you or any of that?
Yeah, I mean, Lone Echo 2, I'm very excited about. I really loved the original Lone Echo, so I hope that eventually comes to fruition. I'm kind of similar with Gary. Everything else, I'd take it or leave it. I mean, I hope they're going to be good and like the reviews will come out and there'll be some really good games. But from the trailers, it's really hard to tell right now. They all seem kind of the same level of, I don't know. Nothing's like insane to me, I guess.
Yeah, no Grand Theft Auto 6 VR yet. And it's a totally different subject, but Strauss Zelnick, did anybody see that comment that he made in some interview recently where he's like, I told everybody VR is going to be a dud. We didn't invest any money of it. I saved the company millions or whatever. He basically threw some serious shade at VR, which makes it sound like, man, I don't know, because we know that the developers of LA Noire VR, the VR case files or whatever, they're working on something, and a lot of people hope it's some kind of Grand Theft Auto spinoff in VR. But I don't know, his comments weren't too encouraging. But Guy, going over to you, when it comes to all these, actually, I don't even know. Do you play a lot of games? I mean, you're a developer and you're working on virtual desktop. What about like experiences? Like these different VR experiences, like some of the earlier Star Wars stuff where it wasn't even like a game at all. Do you try any of that stuff, or are you just so busy working on your own stuff that you really don't have time for much of this?
I don't play much. Last game I played is Half-Life Alyx when it came out,
okay.
But I sometimes play 11 table tennis with my brother who's on the East Coast. So it's fun. I like but I spend most of my time developing. I'm looking forward to Flight Simulator, however. That's something I would want to try.
Yeah.
In VR, the VR version.
Yeah. And of course, you're going to have to get one of those banging video cards, right, to run that baby. 3090.
Yeah. Well, no, I was hoping to get a 3080, but they're all sold out. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty, well, I guess that will pretty much wrap it up here. Actually, wait, let me grab one other thing before we bounce out of here. Let me see if I got this in here still. Yeah, okay, hold on one second. Because I did want to mention to everybody the memory engine. Yes, we have an author in our midst or whatever. Gary, of course, is the author of the memory engine, and it is available now. And it's about VR, AR, and kind of this future. A lot of stuff like really hit with a lot of the things that are going on with privacy and everything like that. And so that book is available now. Gary, how's it doing? Are you doing okay with that? Are you surprised by the reviews that you've gotten? And a lot of people really enjoy it. It's doing okay. It's pretty much what I expected. It's just a hobby thing for me, so I hope people enjoy it if they buy it. That's the main thing. But yeah, it's doing well. I'm pleased that people seem to like it and they get to the end. I think that's the important thing if they get to the end. But yeah, I'm pleased to have finally released it, and I don't really want to do any writing for a little while, to be honest. The one thing I want to mention as well is, I don't know if you mentioned this on your show, Anthony, about the VR Trend magazine that's coming out. The actual there's a magazine that's coming out. I've got an article in that actually in the first issue about, well, sort of vaguely about this book, but it's also the magazine itself is just a great idea to me, like an actual hard copy magazine that you can order and stuff like this. I just like that idea. It's like Retro Gamer. I still buy the Retro Gamer magazine and stuff, but you can get it on that. So I just wanted to mention that as well. But yeah, thanks for mentioning the book. I wasn't expecting that. Oh yeah, no problem. I heard about that magazine thing. I used to be super into like video game magazines. I used to cherish them, and like I was around before the days of the internet, and I remember waiting for Die Hard Game Fan to arrive in my mailbox, and it was like E3 was in your mailbox. I can't explain this to people, but like that's how you would get your news. Like you would find out about a new system in a freaking magazine. It was a totally different world. But yeah, one other thing I did want to remind everybody that is tuning in also, if there's anybody out there that is in the United States that is planning on pre-ordering an Oculus Quest 2, yeah, right, Oculus Quest 2, if you're going to order it on Amazon and you're in the USA, In the show notes, I have 2 links. It's like Amazon affiliate links. I might get like 50 cents or something if you order one through that. But hey, I'd appreciate it. Might as well help support VR365. That would be awesome. But yeah, that's going to go ahead and do it for all of us here on today's show. And not sure when we'll all be back again, but this is a pretty cool reunion. We didn't have Steve, but Guy made up for it. And hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. And that will go ahead and wrap it up. All right, we'll see you guys. Take it easy.
Bye.